The little snippets of body life that we have from the New Testament just indicate that everybody was in the game. Everybody's in the game. All the gifts were necessary.
It wasn't in the hands of a handful.
Clearly, church was not a spectator event. In fact, it wasn't an event at all. Rather than a meeting to attend, church was a community of believers who interacted as family all week long.
You know, Paul persecuted the church. How did he do it? He went from house to house. That's where the church was.
The first century church, of course, was a very simple church. They met in homes and usually not in large numbers. As they met together in these small groups, it centered around the singing of psalms and hymns. It centered around the breaking of bread, the communion.
At the birth of the church, the apostolic leadership was prominent because they were the ones taught for 3.5 years personally by Jesus Christ, who had commissioned them to initiate the work of his church. Soon others learned from the apostles as they all worked together. Churches were founded in Jerusalem and throughout Palestine and had no pastor but Jesus. Soon, the apostles took on more of a coaching and background role in the lives of those they equipped, who gradually took on the responsibility of caring for one another and reaching the lost. By the time Paul wrote his first letters to the churches, his instructions made it clear that the responsibility for pastoral care, teaching, and ministry rested primarily on the shoulders of all the brothers and sisters.
Ignatius felt the only way that he could guarantee the eradication of docetism is if he appointed official leaders of the church to guarantee that its message could not be promulgated.
But it wasn't until 200 years after Ignatius was martyred that a Roman emperor named Constantine led the church in his empire toward full-blown institutionalism. But Constantine was not content with the notoriety he had gained as the most powerful leader ever to rule the Roman Empire. In one of the grander church buildings he had built, he set 13 statues of the 13 apostles, he himself being the 13th, and having a larger statue than all the others. This exalted view of leadership served to amplify and glorify the exclusive position designated to them by Ignatius 200 years earlier. The clergy, a word that had been previously used to designate a pagan priest, began to wear unique clothing to set themselves apart from the laity. State tax revenue, previously designated for pagan religions, now went to the church. Pagan priests and government officials turned priests were becoming Christians to get their share of the full coffers. Soon leadership became a titled position with a paycheck, and the church was run like a business. The emperor began constructing church buildings in Constantinople, Rome, Jerusalem, and in many parts of Italy, all between 323 and 327. This initiated a huge church building campaign in cities all over the empire. The church quickly became an audience with all eyes on the leader up front. Buildings were designed to draw the focus of the congregation away from one another to the front or outward and upwards.
Christianity, in its infant form, had no room for anybody else than Jesus.
The system I talk about is the system of religious obligation. I serve God by doing certain things, rather than I serve God by knowing Him and living in Him.
In the movie The Matrix, the main character, Neo, experiences a shocking revelation when he discovers that the life he has been living has been nothing more than a computer-generated fantasy.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
In the Roman era, when one became a Christian, it meant that he stood not only opposed to the surrounding religions, but the entire culture built on those religions. The early church believed that Jesus was the Old Testament prophesied Messiah, and that he had come, and that he had died in substitution on the cross. That it was the Christians who were able to resist the religious mixtures, syncretism, and the effects of the weaknesses of Roman culture, speaks of the strength. This strength rested on God being an infinite personal God, and that he had spoken in the Old Testament, the revelation through Christ, and the gradually growing New Testament. Look at these Christian catacomb paintings done prior to the Middle Ages. Even if simply portrayed, these are real people living in a real world. This vitality and livingness can be paralleled with the living Christianity of the early church. If they had worshipped Jesus and Caesar, they would have gone unharmed. But they worshipped one God only and rejected all forms of syncretism.